welcome back to Grace Begins podcast. I'm Kathy Cardenas, and this is
Catherine Sutherland.
And we have created this podcast to share stories of where people found God on their journey. The pivotal moments where their lives changed and led them to where they are today. So we have so many amazing guests, and we have another amazing guest today.
Yes, we have Melissa Smith. Melissa is the founder and executive director of an amazing organization, nonprofit organization called Backlight Productions here in Franklin, Tennessee. And they work with the intellectually and developmentally disabled and give them an opportunity to shine in the theater arts program. And they do all these beautiful plays, and it's just such an amazing organization. She's also written some children's books. So without further ado, welcome Melissa Smith.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
We're excited.
Yes, I just love your work and what you're doing with Backlight Productions. So tell us a little bit about, your journey with that. How did that begin for you?
Well, that can be a pretty long story. Do you want me to take you all the way back?
Yes.
Okay. So, I grew up in the arts. I started playing piano when I was about 6 years old and just fell in love with all things performing. So it was, plays, musicals, show choirs, anything that I could do, I wanted to keep doing. And I love being creative. I love dreaming big dreams and then seeing them come to fruition. And, but I think that I learned very on just the pressures of being a performer and, that kind of pressure we put on ourselves to always be perfect and be the most talented and be the most beautiful and all these things. Mm-hmm. And then, so often, in performance, when you're not, you don't get the job, you don't get the part. And so I remember from an early age, just having a lot of shame, like when I wouldn't quite live up to my expectations or I wouldn't get the role or whatnot. And, I can see in hindsight now that a lot of the words that I spoke to myself are things that, like, if anyone ever spoke to my children, like, I just don't even know what I would do. And so I lived in that for a long time. And I went to college and performed in college and whatnot. And I just remember when I was there, just, getting lost in trying to be an adult and live up to the pressure of the academics and then still like living with that shame as it grew and I made mistakes and all this stuff. And so when I left or when I graduated, I just wanted to do something fresh, get out and start over. And all of the doors were closing for me back home, but all of them were opening for me out here. And I didn't know why. I understand now, I think the prayers of our families really work in mysterious ways. Yes. And I can see that now looking back. But I moved out here just as an adventure to see what was going to happen. But I remember just being really tired. I was tired just from the workload and I was emotionally tired just from just that wild ride that was that season of my life. And so I didn't know a lot of people when I came out here, but I knew I just needed some time to figure out who I was. And so I was driving down the street one day and I just remember being in tears and just praying like, God, I just need you to humble me to the point where I can let go. Humble me to the point where I can trust you to do what you want to do and just let you make your desires my desires and your heart my heart. I don't know what that looks like, but I feel like everything that I do is just gets messed up. And so you must know something that I don't know. And so I always joke that when you pray for God to humble you, He loves to answer that prayer.
I've been there, but trust me, He's done it a few times.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it was after I did that I could not find a job anywhere. It was like a recession period. It was 2008, and but I had I had a good degree and I had done great internships and I had all this like determination to like have my dream job. But the only jobs that I could find were, at preschools or day spas or something like that. And, I joke that y'all might need to censor this, but my life really went to shit when my job was to stand outside of a bathroom at a preschool and make sure all the kids wiped their butts enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, Lord, I can do more than this.
Please. Yeah.
This is not my plan.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was that at the point where God said, okay, you're ready now. Now we're ready. And so I finished out my year at that school. And I just took another random side job. I was teaching music lessons and I was helping to direct musicals at a local high school. And then I had to do a third job to make some money. And so I took a random job working at a thrift store that employed adults with disabilities. I had never worked with people with disabilities in my life. I didn't have anybody in my family that had them. I remember in schools, a lot of times they were kept very separate. And so I didn't have many friends either. I just took the job because I knew somebody who knew someone else and was like, okay, fine, I can go through clothes. But when I walked into the store for the first time, I was just bombarded with love. All these people were suddenly my best friend. They had never met me before. They didn't know who I was. I didn't have to be something great. I didn't have to look perfect or act perfect. I just was me, and they loved me for that no matter what. And I just, felt this rush of just, I don't know, comfort and, freedom to just kind of let your guard down and just be you, where it was okay. And so, I worked there and I learned, how to work with people with disabilities. I learned how to support them and communicate with their families. But at the same time, I was still trying to do things that were creative on the side, because that's really where my heart lied and my skill set was. And so, I was trying to figure out who I was going to be. And then one day my boss at the store said to me, well, have you ever thought about, blending the two? And I said, no. What do you mean? And she was like, well, what if you, did arts with people with disabilities? I was like, okay, well, I could try. And so I went home and I wrote a script based on the story of Cinderella. And my bosses let us, at the end of the workday, we pushed all the furniture and stuff aside, and we used the upstairs area of the thrift store to practice this little play that I had written. And I recorded a little background track on my keyboard in my bedroom, and we grabbed props and costumes from around the shop, and we performed it a couple months later for about 40 people in a youth room at a local church. And at the end of it, everyone was in tears. And it didn't take much. Cinderella was pulled in a red wagon, and the music came out of the speakers from my computer, and it was so simple. But it was just obvious that it was something special that had to keep on happening. And so after that, I said, all right, well, let's do it again. Y'all can invite your friends if you want to. We'll do it on Mondays when the store's closed. And we'll, maybe find a real stage this time. So that's what happened. And every year, every show just got bigger and bigger. More people kept inviting their friends. And now here we are 12 years later. And it's what it is today.
Well, when that's like a true testimony to when God's in something, he's going to make it happen.
That's right.
It's really powerful. I love what you said about that you felt love. My daughter has expressed that. She works with special needs at church, and she said, honestly, that's where I see God the most, is just in their faces, and they're so just honest and pure. And she just said, like, that has really helped her really see God. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And you just did Cinderella with our friend Laura, who was the original Cinderella on Broadway. So tell us about that and how that process was and how that all came about.
Sure. So we were celebrating our 10-year anniversary as a nonprofit, and I knew I wanted to do something big. And we decided that it would be fun to take it back to where it all started. The first rendition of Cinderella. Let's do it again and do it 100 times bigger. And so, I always have big ideas, which sometimes we look back and we say, oh, maybe we could have done that a little smaller. But this one just felt right. I was like, you know what, let's do it at TPAC. And, everybody at TPAC was super just helpful and welcoming and accommodating. And I was like, if we're going to spend the money to do it here, let's get as many people as we can involved. And so I believe very strongly in nonprofits who have similar missions coming together and working in partnership to be able to achieve their mission. And so I invited all these organizations to come and participate with us in the show, and they all participated in different musical numbers, which made it so that we had about 86 performers with disabilities performing Rodgers and Hammerstein's, the full Broadway musical at the biggest, theater in town. And then we had the privilege of involving these local professional musicians. We had all sorts of different professional musicians come in and sing songs, but really the icing on the cake was Laura. I mean, to be able to come in and say, we've got the original Broadway Cinderella who's here, and she's going to be playing the role of the fairy godmother. And what was funny about that is when I first got introduced to Laura, I thought, I'm just going to ask her to sing a song, even if she just sings, it's possible. That's great. Yes. But the first time I talked to her, she was like, can I play the whole role? I was like, yes, you can. And so it's just, involving professionals is something I'm very passionate about doing. It gives them an opportunity to use their gifts to put someone else in the spotlight.
Yeah, I just love
and
that. Yes.
I also love how when, it's like we all have similar experiences as performers. And I love seeing the transformation that happens when they come through our doors and they get to experience the same thing that I got to experience 15 years ago when I walked through the doors. And to see just them experience theater in a whole new way and to just be loved on and ministered to. What's great about Backlight is Backlight doesn't, we don't have to talk about Jesus. We just show Jesus. And our students oftentimes will just go up to someone and just start praying over him. And they might have no background or even desire to have anything to do with God, but it's like, oh, you don't have a choice now. This is happening. And so it's such a huge part of our ministry is to be blended in with our community, because that's what we're called to do. We're supposed to be in the world. And, I feel like this is such a tremendous ministry, not just to our students and to their families, but to the arts world as a whole.
And you're giving them such dignity as well. We're going to talk about your book as well, but just there's such a misconception with the intellect with IDD that people don't understand them, and they don't give them the opportunity to. They are human beings just like we are, and they have a voice and they have opinions. And it's so wonderful that you're giving them an opportunity to shine and show their talents and gifts in such a beautiful way. Do you, in order to them to do the whole role, do you have different people that is it for one role you might have 3 or 4 people playing that role? Because I was just thinking about the lines and everything for them to remember all of that. It's a lot. How do you work through that?
So, when in the early years of Backlight, I would write original shows because I didn't think that was possible. I thought, in licensing agreements, you're not supposed to alter any of the lines. And so, I thought there's no way that somebody can do a whole part by themselves. That's a lot of pressure. And so what I found was that there's no rules about how many people can play a certain role. And so we do what we call multicasting. And if a role is really heavy, then we can have multiple people play the same part. And so when we did Wizard of Oz, I think we had about 7 Dorothys. And every time one Dorothy came up the yellow brick road, a new Dorothy came down the yellow brick road, and they all wore the same dress and wig. And so it translated just fine.
That's
but every
perfect.
single girl felt like she was the star. And so you get to give everyone a chance to be the lead role, to play the parts they've always dreamed of, but to do just as much as they can handle and say, you know what, that's enough. If that's what you got to give, we'll meet you where they're at. I remember a young lady we have in our program. She's a quadriplegic, and she can remember some lines, but my favorite was seeing her as a Dorothy who we casted her in the scene where she gets to go through Oz and get pampered and get her hair done and all this stuff. And it was the sweetest moment. And so it's fun for us just because we don't have to say no to anybody. We don't have to turn anyone down.
Yeah.
We get to give everyone their dream role if that's what they want. And so, but we have learned over time, though, that even we were underestimating people. I thought our students would never be able to play full roles. I've got a large handful of students who now are playing full roles. I mean, we did Singing in the Rain, and our Cosmo was the same part the whole entire time.
Wow.
Our Lena Lamont did the whole role. I mean,
that's amazing.
I think we don't know what they can do because we don't give them the chance to show it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so really our goal is to say, this is, if you want a chance, we're going to give it to you, and go ahead and show the world.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity. And so hopefully through that, we're going to help the public understand a little bit more about the community and to be more receptive to incorporating them into everyday life.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think our culture is definitely trying to do more of that. Like I'm noticing in schools, they're definitely trying to help the kids intermingle and understand each other.
Much better.
It's so much better because, as you were saying earlier, when I was growing up, they were very much separated. And it's an unfortunate because we need to be able to have those relationships.
Yeah.
So that obviously is how your book came about.
It is. Yes. It's a perfect segue.
Perfect segue.
Do you want me to dive into that?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah. So I have 2 kids. I have Dominic, who is 8, and Aria, who's 9. Wait, no, that's not right. How old are my kids?
Mom brain.
My goodness. The one. So I have 2 kids. I have Dominic, who's 8, and Aria, who's 7. And, when we don't have any family in town. And so when they were little, they would come with me to rehearsals and shows and everything. And they grew up around our Backlight students. So, when they were really little, they really didn't notice any difference. Our Backlight friends were our Backlight friends, But it was around when my son turned about 6 or 7 that I started to see his little wheels turning when he would come with me, and he would start to notice that somebody was acting differently than others, or maybe looked or walked differently than the others. And he wasn't saying it out loud, but I could definitely see it, or he might like giggle about something. And I was like, okay, I think we're going to have this conversation now. And so, and because I work in the community, I found it easy to have the conversation because I knew, the kinds of words to say. I knew how to explain it in a way that made sense. But afterwards, I thought, that would be really hard if I hadn't worked with this demographic. I don't know that I would have thought to have the conversation or knew how to have the conversation. And a lot of times our instincts as parents, when your kid says something inappropriate in public or they ask a question in public, your instinct is to like hurry them away and be like, shh, don't say that.
Oh, 100%.
But, right? We've all been there. And so, I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a tool so that parents could have this conversation with their kids early on and, have the words to say given to them, and then have a way so that when they encountered somebody out in public that had autism or dwarfism or whatever the disability is, instead of taking the time right then in that moment to explain the whole thing, you could just say, hey, do you remember that character from that book who had autism? Well, this person has autism just like them. And then all of a sudden your child just makes the correlation and they get it. And they can be empathetic now and behave the way that the other characters did in the book, likewise. And so that's really what this series is for. It's equipping. It's equipping our parents. It's equipping our children to understand, differences are inevitable. And differences are just part of this world. And we can either pretend like they're not there and rush away from people and try to just keep to ourselves, or we can just acknowledge them and get curious about them and, learn about them, and then learn to befriend people who are different than us, because that only helps us to grow.
Absolutely.
And so, since I've had those conversations with my kids now, they get it. you know, and they can be kind and they can be empathetic. And I think that all of our kids can. We just
One
need to
family at a
prepare.
time.
One family at a time is right.
Yeah. It's so important to teach our kids about this stuff. I had a similar thing with my son. He's not autistic, but just having a big personality as a child, and feeling like you can see them getting chipped away at, and to just give children the opportunity to ask questions without shaming them, first of all, but also just helping them understand that we're all fearfully and wonderfully made, and we all have a purpose, and we all deserve to be treated with dignity.
Yes.
You know, the snickering, I have such a hard time with that, with kids snickering and laughing, and it really bothers me. And I had that I'm that mom that has that reaction, like, you know, shaming my kid instead of helping them understand they're reacting that way because it's new to them and they don't understand it. You know, so
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the hope with this series, you know, this first book, it introduces a character with autism. And the books it's called Friends of Franklin County is the series. And there's going to be like a group of 4 friends who are, you know, in every book, but each one is kind of featured in each story. And in each story, they meet a friend with a different disability. And so you get to learn a little bit about that specific one, you know, learn what does it mean to have that disability, but then also, you know, how can I be a friend to somebody with that disability? And ultimately, the goal is just coming back to that friendship route. And so book 1 is called The Great Changeup, My Friend with Autism. And it's available now.
And is it available on where can people find it?
People can find it on friendsoffranklincounty.com. You can
Okay.
order it, and we're slowly getting it into some bookstores here in Nashville as well.
That's amazing. Would it be on going to Amazon or anything like that?
Eventually, maybe.
Yeah. Yes. Got to get it out there. Put a plug.
I think it's
That's
a beautiful organization. And I love how, you know, backtracking where you talked about recognizing the open doors and the closed doors. You know, people, you know, that's where I feel like we find God's grace is in those moments, because it seems like everything's a mess, you know, but it's like it's opening up that led you to this beautiful space, which you would have not have been, you know, had you not, or you would have stayed stuck, or you wouldn't have opened that door. And so I think it's amazing, because it's not only a decision for yourself that you're doing something great, but you've now changed so many lives that would have never had this opportunity. And so it's like in the moment, we just think about ourselves, even maybe this is just my ship, but it's like, no, you have no idea you're about to change so many lives. And I think it's beautiful. And it's, you know, that's how God works. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We forget he sees the big picture.
Yeah.
And we think we're in control of this big picture, and he lets us take our path. He'll let us go off a little bit, but he always brings us back and presents opportunities to us to put us exactly where we need to be. And it's beautiful that he's done that for you.
Yeah.
And he's using you and your gifts in such a beautiful way.
He is.
You know?
And, you know, I say all the time, Backlight happened so in spite of me. You know, there's no reason why it should be what it is today. I mean, I wasn't trained to do anything that I've done.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did most of it while staying home with 2 toddlers.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, you know, God never uses those who are, you know, most equipped. He just uses those who are willing. And so it just took coming to that point and holding your hands out and saying, I don't know what to do with this, but do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a daily thing that we have to do, is saying, what do you want to do today? Who do you want me to meet? Where do you want me to go? And when you do that, he leads you on this journey that is so much bigger than anything you could have done. And so, you know, just the willingness and just being in tune and in communication and just constant conversation with him and just stepping out in obedience is kind of what I want to teach my kids. It's just, you know, it's not about how great you are.
Right. It's not about you.
Exactly. He's going to work through you no matter what. So
when he humbles, I think that's part of being humble and the humility is that when you're in that place, you're letting it go. And that's a hard place to be, but he can bring you something so beautiful when we do it. And so many people resist that. They just can't let go. And I mean, we're all like that on a regular basis. We think we're letting it go, but we're not really, because we're really thinking about it. We're trying to make it work. And so I feel like, he can make things happen when we just release and say, I trust you. let's see what you're going to do. And it always turns out better than for sure.
So much
Whenever I try to run my own life, it turns into a hot mess. So I'm like, I just give it to him because he does a much better job with it. I'll end up, on the street somewhere. Yeah. So,
And coming back to just like that, you know, I thought I was so hard on myself for being imperfect all the time. But I mean, the beauty of being a believer is just that, you know, it's acknowledging that you are imperfect and just being okay with it. Coming to a place where you're like, okay, you know, I am going to screw up. And that's why I need God, you know? And so we don't want to just pretend like we got this and I can do it. It's just the comfort and the freedom of, I'm not perfect and I'm okay with that.
I think in the arts that's a big problem with like dancers and that negative self-talk and just feeling so that comparison to others and all of that, and it can be very debilitating. And I saw this thing recently where this woman you were saying about talking to your children, like you would never want to hear your child say that about themselves, yet you were telling yourself that story for so many years. And she said, don't talk about my daughter like that, or don't talk about my friend like that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to use that. So she said something the other day and I was like, don't talk about my friend Kathy like that. She was like, and I thought it was so good because I would never allow the people I love to say horrible things about themselves, but we so often do that to ourselves. So yeah, that's interesting. I think that you are doing so much beautiful work here. And I love it, and I can't wait to come and see the production.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
What's your
keep
next
us updated.
Yes, yeah, so we're doing School of Rock.
Oh, fun!
We got real tired of doing princesses. We did Beauty and the Beast with Cinderella. Yeah. So we took a big turn. We're doing School of Rock on June 1st and 2nd at Soli Deo Center at Christ Presbyterian Academy.
Okay.
And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a really fun show. I mean, our students have just really enjoyed picking up these instruments and rocking out. And most all of our students are playing full roles because there's a lot of them in the show. And my favorite part about the show, the thing that really sold me, is there is a song called If Only You Would Listen. And it's like the chorus says, I've got so much to say, if only you would listen. And I think so often our students, sometimes when they take a long time to get their words out, and that makes people uncomfortable, so they'll talk for them or they'll brush over it. And so we're being really intentional with this show, having a live band that's going to stop and wait for every word to get out so that everybody is heard. And it's just a really powerful song of just, if only you would listen. So it's going to be really sweet.
And patience too. It's like, just being patient. We are always in such a hurry. It's like, slow down, just slow it down.
Yes.
Pay attention. Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder for everyone.
Laura had said about when she had been a part of your production was that how beautiful that was. Like how the audience, she's like, they just waited and they were so present and they just wanted to hear everybody have their moment and see everybody have their moment. She's like, it was such a collaborative, beautiful thing to be a part of.
That's true. Yeah. Our audiences are the best. They come in and I think a lot of them, when they're new, they don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
They're very surprised when they come in. But they're very interactive part of the experience because they're what's going to fuel our students and give them the confidence to do something that's really hard. And so, I mean, you will have a student on stage who might take a long time to say their words, but the audience will be so quiet. You can hear a pin drop. And then as soon as they get their line out, they just erupt in this huge applause and there's cheering. Like we encourage, I mean, there's all kinds of reactions. It's just a really beautiful experience. And we let each student have as long of the moment as they want. And so you're just in there for the full, ride, however long it is.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I hope that it inspires all of our listeners out there. Yeah. And please, you can support and follow Backlight Productions. Yes. And what's the website?
Backlightproductions.org. Okay. And you can find us on social media at Backlight Productions TN.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You're amazing. We look forward to the next books too. Me too. Yeah. All right. Thanks.